truth. In West Africa, Ebola is now an epidemic of the likes that we have not seen before. It's spiraling out of control. It is getting worse. It's spreading faster and exponentially.
Frightening words today from U.S. President Obama as he announces sending more support to West Africa to help contain the Ebola outbreak. And those were shocking words when he called it an epidemic. 3,000 soldiers are going, armed with medical and logistic support. Canada has just announced it's sending $2.5 million in medical equipment and protective gear to the WHO. That's on top of 800 to 1,000 doses of an experimental vaccine Canada donated and $5 million for relief efforts. The question is this thing starting to spin out of control? Is more needed? The UN is now asking for $1 billion to contain this outbreak. Nearly 5,000 people have been infected. Almost half of them have died. Where is this headed? What else should and must be done? Joining me now, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Deepak Obrai, NDP International Development critic Hélène Laverdière, and Liberal International Development critic Kirsty Duncan. Mr. Obrai, the President called this an epidemic and is sending troops. Canada's talking about $2.5 million. Could Canada send the DART team, which has mobile hospitals, to help?
Look, we agree that this is a very serious issue and it's an international response is required. And we are glad the Americans are doing that. And we, as you have mentioned in your listing, have given $2.5 million for protective equipment to support those who are in the front line. But at this time, we have, of course, heard listened to the plea that has come from the United Nations of $1 billion. We'll work with our partners to see what best can Canada contribute. It is always important to recognize where our contribution is effective on the ground, and that is what we'll be doing in the next couple of days as we coordinate with our allies.
Does Canada consider this an epidemic, as Mr. Obama said?
Yes, we do.
Okay. They're talking about $1 billion. We gave $2.5 million. Are we considering more aid?
Well, as they have now said it on Thursday, we are coordinating our effort with the international community. What is urgently required is this to the frontline workers. Now remember, we have a laboratory already in Sierra Leone with our personnel on ground testing for Ebola. We have now important that the healthcare workers be protected as quickly as possible. So for that we have given $2.5 million, as we announced yesterday, for protective equipment. In the meantime, WHO has asked for more. We are giving whatever, but it will be a coordinated effort with the international committee. But at the forefront of all of this is the WHO.
Finally, Mr. Obrai, how concerned is the government that Ebola could come here to Canada and the transmission as it grows, if it is an epidemic, if it's something we've never seen ever before in terms of the scope of it? How concerned is the government that this could come to Canada?
Well, we are of course concerned. In Canada, there is a low risk. At this current time, there is nobody in Canada affected, but we have now put in protocols all across the country to, in case there is any outbreak or anything, to address that issue. So we are pretty well prepared in Canada, and Canada is at a low risk at this time.
All right, let me go into Hélène Laverdière. Do you think Canada has done enough to contribute to the growing international effort to stop this?
Look, I welcome what Canada is doing, of course, but it's so little. It's like it's a Band-Aid. It's not even a Band-Aid. It's about 1/5 of a Band-Aid on an hemorrhage. The problem is we need to act very, very quickly. A month ago, the UN was saying it needed $100 million to tackle the epidemic. And now it's $1 billion. So in a month, it has increased tenfold. The more we wait to tackle this huge crisis, the more it's going to be costly, both economically, both in terms of security in the region, stability in the region, and of course in terms of human life. So I hear the government talking about the next few days. I do hope it's not more than a few days and it's not a few weeks, because it's an emergency.
All right. Let me just show you a clip, and I'll get Ms. Duncan in here. This is the president. He's not just called it an epidemic. President Obama has now called this a national security priority. Listen to what he said today.
So this is an epidemic that is not just a threat to regional security. It's a potential threat to global security. If these countries break down, if their economies break down, if people panic, that has profound effects on all of us, even if we are not directly contracting the disease.
Ms. Duncan, when you hear how the President has described this and the Canadian government has described the potential impact, do you think Canada is contributing enough to stop this?
Let me start by saying, look, this is an ongoing and unprecedented outbreak of Ebola, and it's a dire public health crisis, and it requires an equally unprecedented response from the international community to contain and control it. The Canadian contribution to the effort to date is not nearly enough. The government should take an example from its international partners, such as the United States, and provide more funding, more supplies to this humanitarian crisis.
Well, how much? I mean, that's the question. What else? Again, they've given $2.5 million. They've got 800 to 1,000 doses of the experimental vaccine. You've got the Joint Command Center in Monrovia. Do you think the DART team should go?
Okay, let me put this in perspective. It is a dire crisis. These are not my words. These are the words of the World Health Organization. As you've said, they're asking for $1 billion. Of the roughly 5,000 cases, 50% of those have come in the last 21 days. We are asking for more money. I'm not going to play a numbers game. More money and more supplies. The international community must dramatically scale up its international response, and Canada absolutely has a role to play.
Well, Mr. O'Brien, when you listen to the President calls it a national security issue and you say it's a low-risk situation for Canadians, is Canada underestimating the potential growth of this? And I recognize you don't want to panic. It's the last thing you want to do. But, you know, the more people read about this, the growth has been on a frightening curve.
Indeed, but it is in West Africa, where there are no medical facilities, where first aid workers have died. So the whole concentrated effort requires to go into these areas which are vulnerable, where security is threatened. But in the case of Canada here, we have the facilities, we have the ability, we have put in place protocols that will, you know, protect us from this virus. So, but at the current time, the whole situation is concentrated in Africa, and that is where the international effort is going to be, and that is where Canada has contributed. Why that $2.5 million is immediately to the healthcare workers in those countries where there is no facilities, where very poor healthcare system, and as you know, where more and more...
Has the government shipped the vaccines yet?
The government has already provided the vaccine to the World Health Organization.
They've been shipped?
Have they been given? Yes, they've been given.
Okay, they've been shipped. Hélène Laverdière, any details on what you would like to see then, or is it, you know, well, are we proceeding apace?
No, we're not proceeding apace, and time is of the essence right now. It's absolutely essential. I personally think that we should offer DART. I mean, we send DART when there's a catastrophe somewhere. Why not? It's actually a catastrophe. And I think we need to go to look beyond the strictly medical issue. Indeed, a country like Liberia is starting to collapse, literally. So we're talking of the stability of the whole region. We're talking of terrible humanitarian impact because, you know, the economy is terribly affected. People are dying in the street in Sierra Leone. And it's, you know, I don't agree.
So do you want the DART team deployed with a mobile hospital? I mean, is that an option?
Mobile hospitals, yes, absolutely. I think it's an option. You know, in Guinea, Liberia, and Sierra Leone, they are right now turning patients who come to the facilities, turning them away because they can't receive them. So these people, they go back to their community, they go back wherever, and then they, of course, run the risk of contaminating other people. So it's just growing and growing. They need hospitals. Field hospitals is key.
This is something, Ms. Duncan, you're obviously familiar with your background. Why people, any perspective on why this is spreading so quickly?
I think, again, as I have said, it is a dire situation. The international community really does have to dramatically scale up the response. We heard President Obama in the United States step up today. We need Canada to do the same. $2.5 million yesterday is not enough. When in August I wrote to the minister, we asked him for more money for the crisis, and a week later $5 million came. Now these are important contributions. It's simply not enough.
All right, we got to leave it there. We'll watch to see where this situation unfolds. Deepak Oberoi, Hélène Laverdière, and Kirsty Duncan, I appreciate your time as always. And we want to hear what you think out there. We're hearing a lot from our viewers about